Hey, Quicksters, welcome to Quick Take. I'm Susie along with James. We are so glad that you decided to choose us today, right?
We're excited. Oh, we're excited, and we have some fun stuff to talk about. So
Me too.
sit down, get a cup of tea, coffee, whiskey, and let's get ready to rumble.
Okay, so here's my story for today. Always true stories behind closed
these
doors.
these are true stories,
Names may have been changed to protect the not so innocent. Let's just put it
and
that way.
and it's highly likely we'll use more than one name, but we mean the same person. We
So if
just
you
to lose
get
track.
confused, let us know. So one of my clients is a VP. Her name is Rachel, and so I do sessions with director level and VP level, and so it's really interesting to me because I get a lot of intel behind closed doors from both levels.
hmm
And so Rachel's direct reports were in this meeting, and they were telling me that when Rachel has a staff meeting, she basically opens up the staff meeting and talks the entire time. So I had a session with the VPs a couple weeks later, and one of the questions I just lobbed out is tell me about your listening. How do you coach your team? And Rachel went first. She always jumps in. Oh, now I made that connection. She jumped in and she was like, "Oh, I'm such a good listener. Like I get on my calls and I just let my team do it."
Yep,
And so I was like almost blown away. I couldn't say to her, "Wrong.
that's right.
I
That's
have
not what
heard
everyone.
otherwise."
Right, right,
I
right.
couldn't. But I was really curious about this. Actually, it was more than a few weeks ago, to be honest. I circled back with her direct reports because I had a conversation with her outside of that to tell her I thought
Mhm.
she needed to listen more. And they report that she's still not listening.
Yeah, and I think that if I recall the story too, that it is a matter of, there's uh this this level within the organization that this is the most challenging, right? It's
Yes.
when you get promoted from being a hero to a scale multiplier is where this is the most difficult. It's where people no longer can work hard to get it all done. And so you now have to you're the multiplier. You have to get people to do the work. And so that's when you have to go, from boss to coach.
Mhm.
And that transition is possibly the hardest thing to do for high potential, uh, very good employees is going from boss to coach.
And I feel like you need to restate that because it is the hardest transition, and it's not up to somebody else to make that transition for
No.
you. You have to change your mindset, and
hmm
so many people don't because once you get up higher, like that SVP doesn't know that about Rachel. She is
Right.
not gonna get that feedback from anybody else because you know, they're catching bigger fish. They're frying bigger fish,
Yep.
whatever that saying is. They're on to bigger
Catching and then
things.
frying. You can do both.
Mhm. And there's at some point, leadership becomes a personal responsibility that you need to self-assess how
hmm
you're doing, and you need to observe your own leadership by what are the things that you're seeing that are happening around you.
Couldn't agree more. In fact, our previous episode that I think we dropped talked about the responsibility you have as a leader to do certain things.
Yep.
And in this particular case, you have a responsibility as a leader to consciously understand the difference between the boss and the coach, and examine it for what it is, and make a concerted effort to change the way that you lead.
Yes, and what makes it even, I'm getting so hot, I have to take my jacket off because this topic makes me really I'm very passionate
Or
about
she's
it.
fired up,
I'm
folks. Look
fired
at
up.
this. Oh
I'm
my
fired
gosh.
up, I have to say. But the other thing that happens is self-awareness goes down as you go up in an organization, and so part of the contributing factors to that is people learn what kind of feedback you'll take or not. And so if
Mm,
you think about the fact that you're being an observer of you, and if you aren't showing and portraying those good leadership skills,
right, right,
you have
right.
less of a mirror to look at. And
Totally
so,
agree.
oh, it's so important that people listen to this because you have to make that shift. You have
Yep,
to look
yep,
at yourself
yep,
as it's easy to be a boss. It's easy to say, do this because I said so. It's
yep.
harder to give guidance and shut up and then
It is.
really observe.
No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's, the first piece of advice I'll give is, when you look back at what has happened to Microsoft over the last 15 years, Satya's approach to changing the way they lead, the emphasis on empathy and coaching has been incredible, and the way that that culture has changed. And that is a
Mhm.
concerted, top down perspective on the importance of getting things done through empathy and mentorship. And I think that that is one of the best examples of a company who has pivoted and really transformed the way it behaves and reinvented itself to a point of, now leading the industry in so many ways. And I think that my first piece of advice is truly engage in the thinking around coaching and make it part of your overall leadership style.
Absolutely, and you're exactly right. When I have organizations that come to me and say, "I want you to do the boss to coach, and I want you to start at this
Hmm.
level." No, it has to be done at the senior levels or it will not happen, and that level needs to be coaching. I love that
Yep.
you use that example with Microsoft because that's when it gets sticky and it
Yep.
stays, and then it becomes a part of the fabric of the culture.
Yeah, one of the best books I remember reading recently was The Coaching Habit,
Mm,
which talks about how do you incorporate that as a habit. That was the key there. It's not
yes.
how to be a coach, it's how the coaching becomes a habit and how it becomes part of your day to day leadership style. So I think that's just so important.
It is. I gotta tell a funny story. I talked to an SVP before we started this program, and I said, "How are you at coaching?" And he goes, "Oh, I got
Hmm.
this. I have coached my son's little league team for like 5 years." Like, and he was serious.
Yeah, I believe it.
And
I
I
believe
was
it.
just like, "Oh my gosh, if that's your
Yes.
answer, you're
Then
wrong.
we got a
You're
long we
wrong.
got
You should listen
we
to
got
this."
we got a long way to go in the idea of coaching. That it's like saying I'm a really good engineer because I drive trains. It's not the same. It's not the same thing.
That's probably an inside joke, but yes. No, that's true. Okay, what's the second tip?
you know, I think the other element that's so important is you've got to keep you got to foster an environment of continuous learning. You've got
Yeah.
to get your people to feel comfortable
Yep.
that they are always changing the way they do things. I love thinking about how Google had historically had the 20% time where you were really making people think outside the box and really engaging their other part of their brain, changing the way that they are comfortable. And I think if you are going to make that pivot from boss to coach, you've also got to have an environment in which you are allowing your people to continuously learn.
And you're illustrating that you are putty as well. You are a work in progress and
Yes.
you have to show that and illustrate that you're learning and shifting along the
Hmm.
way.
Hmm. You are putty. Is that part of
Simply
I know
putty.
you do a big. Oh, that's oh my gosh, you've got putty right there. That's crazy. That's handy. And it didn't show up very well on the screen, I will say. The color
Does it
is that
look more
silly putty?
familiar? It's silly
That yeah,
putty.
that's probably what
It's
you should have gone
quiet
with.
so that I'm not like
Ah,
clicking something. So
oh, I do know that
now you
sound. I
know.
can smell it. I can even smell it.
Okay, we went off topic. Let's bring it back.
Uh,
So
that's
it's
never
important
happened.
to
That's never
illustrate.
happened.
It's important to illustrate that
Yep.
you're a work in progress too. And
Yes.
some of the ways that I've seen this be successful in leaders is even articulating, listen, I got this feedback. I'm gonna illustrate, I heard it and this is what I'm trying to do to put it in
Yep.
place.
Yep.
Or being vulnerable in a way that you can say, "Ooh, wow, after all this time, I realized this was I need to shift this. I need to ask that
Sure.
differently."
Yep, yep. I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a great segue to my third recommendation, which is, you really don't understand something until you teach it. And I think that one of the best ways for you to really focus on how you are being a better coach is through specific and targeted mentorship. Identify folks within your company, outside the company, in your community that you can mentor because you can't tell somebody to do something
No.
who is a mentor. If you are working with a graduate or somebody in a different industry and it just seems to you it's like so simple, tell them to go to hell. Well, you're going to learn really quickly that that's not really adding any value. Putting yourself in your shoes as a mentor is a really great way to start to build the muscle that is so important when it comes to being, that kind of coach. I think so many companies over the years, GE comes to mind, Procter and Gamble, all of them have very specific mentorship programs, and I think that the identification of the need for that really continues to show and highlight the value that that brings to the table.
And I also heard that you said, "Actually do it. Don't
Oh
just
yeah.
talk about it. Don't write it on the board." I mean, I that happens to me. I just did a session with a new group this week, and I had new slides that I did, and they looked so good to me in my head, and then I got up to do them, and I'm like, "This is too much
I've never seen these
information for the
before. Yeah.
audience. This doesn't work." And
Right,
so
right,
that
right.
just that click in to say, and that takes courage to go ahead
Hmm.
and try, and having a
Yep.
mentor can really help you get that courage to do it.
No, you've got to have the perspective. You've got to do it more than once. Just like those slides, you've got to have the repetition, the muscle
Yep.
memory. You can't do something well after doing it once. And I think that mentorship is a great way to learn to coach your people differently than, especially if you've been comfortable being a boss.
So good. So good. I used to be comfortable as a boss, and it's a lot of work to be a coach. So don't just
It's
think
so much harder.
so much harder. It's not the easy route.
Yep,
People think
yep,
I've
yep.
done it before. It's easy. It's not. It's not
No.
like you learn it and you get better at it, but it is something you have to work on a regular
Mhm,
basis.
mhm. No, I couldn't agree more.
All right, what are your tips?
So my 3 tips are pretty good. First, you've got to have an environment of continuous learning. I think is the first one. I did that second last time, but I think in this order it makes more sense. Create an environment of continuous learning.
Yep.
That way, you are comfortable being uncomfortable, and you're more comfortable with change. Second, you want to integrate coaching into your leadership style. So step away from the command and control, understanding that that type of coaching in your leadership is going to move more needles, and it's going to affect a broader change. And then third, really focus on mentorship. Mentorship outside of your org chart, outside of your company, is a great way to build a muscle that can be applied into your new leadership style. And I think the world is better for it if we had more people using mentorship as a way to grow. So I strongly encourage you to use that as a way to improve your leadership skills.
Love it. Such an important topic. Thanks, James.
Good topic.